Hi everyone and welcome back. Here I have the final two wines of the master pack for the April subscriptions. We've got two full-bodied red wines to finish with, one of them coming from Spain and the other from slightly closer to home from the Yarra Valley. So starting with a Spanish white wine. This is from Rioja Alta, who's one of the very, very historic producers of the Rioja region. They're what we'd consider a classic producer or a traditional producer, as opposed to a more modern producer, which we've started to see coming into the scenes on the last 20 years or so. And really what defines their wine styles is the maturation process and the style, I guess, ultimately that they're trying to produce. So these wines tend to be a little bit softer in their red fruit characteristics. One of the big differences here is that they use American oak in the maturation process, and this imparts some very unique characters into the wines. These sort of dill, coconut, very much a vanilla, cocoa, chocolate-like characteristics, which is quite unique. And that's opposed to the more modern styles. And these wines emulate wines that come out of Bordeaux. They're very sleek, elegant, a lot of new oak. The big difference being that they use a lot of French oak in their maturation. So this is a really special producer. There are only a handful of producers who really work authentically in this sort of traditional or classic manner. This is made 100% from Tempranillo. Tempranillo, of course, being the king grape variety of the Rioja region. And you are entitled to blend with some other grape varieties throughout this area. But as I say, this wine is made exclusively from Tempranillo, medium bodied with this lovely richness to extreme complexity. It's a Reserva category wine. There are three styles of Rioja that you tend to see on the market. We've got Crianza, Reserva, and Grand Reserva wines, which tend to be the flagship wines from any particular property. And so Reservas have to stay in the winery for a minimum of 3 years before they're released onto the market. One of those years has to be spent in oak. In this instance, the wine has spent 3 years in oak and then some additional time in the cellar, resting in bottle before it's been released into the market. So it's taken the criteria and gone even further so that the wines are really drinking at their best when they're released into the marketplace. Because there's a long period of time aging in oak in the winery, it does mean a lot of the sediment or colour precipitates out there. So it doesn't tend to be a huge amount of sediment that forms in the bottom of the wines, but you will find some there. So I highly recommend putting these wines into a decanter, not only to take them off their sediment, but obviously also to give them some aeration as well. You'll see here a couple of different wine glasses that I have. Your sort of standard kind of classic white wine glass, and here we've got, this is really a kind of Bordeaux or Cabernet wine glass, and of course I highly recommend drinking this wine after decanting out of a glass like this. But you know, if you only have the white wine glasses available, it's not going to be the end of the world either. So the 2012 vintage from Rioja Alta. I really hope you enjoy that. It's a really special, quite unique and very historic wine from Spain. As mentioned, we move slightly closer to home with this next wine. It comes from a really great young winemaker. I say young, I mean saying he's a young winemaker for a long period of time now. Probably classified as middle-aged now, but Luke Lambert's shaken up the Yarra Valley a little bit. One of the more historic Australian wine regions, built its reputation on Pinot Noir, Chardonnay, as well as Cabernet. And now with these young guys, we're starting to see some really exciting other varieties, and Shiraz, or Syrah as he's named it, is certainly one of those. The one thing that he does maybe a little bit differently to other big name Australian wineries with his Shiraz or his Syrah is to not use a lot of new oak, quite different to the Spanish wine that we've just had. So these wines are about purity. He uses 4,000 litre big barrels, or foudres, that you see being used around the world in various different regions. Quite typical or traditional to see these getting used in the Rhone, where Syrah comes from, of course. He uses a lot of whole bunch, so that means stem inclusion as well in the maceration process, and that can impart some added savoury characteristics to the wine, often a nice sort of peppery, green, sappy, herbal characteristics imparted because of the use of whole bunch. And Luke, over the years, has kind of increased the amount of whole bunch as he's gained a bit more confidence with the fruit that he's using, and he's up to about 80% in this wine now, and it's really beautifully handled. It can really throw the wine out if it's not done correctly, but Luke's really mastered the art of using a bit of whole bunch to impart a bit of complexity in a bit of character. Wild fermented, not fined or filtered. It's kind of a modern take on Australian Shiraz or Syrah. You know, it's this cooler climate style. It's medium to full without being supremely heavy. And what you find in these wines also is that the alcohol levels, you know, if you're looking at Shiraz, say from somewhere like McLaren Vale or the Barossa Valley in South Australia, some of the more traditional wine producing areas for this grape, the alcohols would be 14 at a minimum, often 14.5, 15, depending on how they choose to label them. So they can be quite big, sort of blockbuster style wines. Luke's Shiraz here is 13% alcohol, and that just shows you that there's a bit more elegance to these wines. I certainly recommend decanting this again 20 minutes before drinking. Do not serve it too warm. Out of a Vintec, 16 to 18, 20 degrees probably at a maximum for these. I personally think is the perfect temperature, and it just adds to the refreshing character that they're capable of having. But wonderful, decant, big glasses, and it's 2018 vintage, so it is a young wine. If you have the patience and the right areas to be able to lay these down, I highly recommend doing so. For both of the wines that I've just spoken about, you'll gain added complexity and a little bit more bang for your buck by doing so. So I hope you enjoy those. I hope you enjoy all 6 of the wines that I've presented for you over these short videos. There'll be plenty more to come. And thank you once again for being part of Wine Theory. Happy drinking.